On a crisp January morning in 2011, Catherine Elizabeth Middleton stood before her childhood bedroom mirror for what she knew would be the last time as simply Kate. The reflection staring back at her showed a young woman on the precipice of an extraordinary transformation, one that would see her trade her ordinary life for a destiny she never could have imagined when she first met a certain prince at university. In just 4 months, she would walk down the aisle of Westminster Abbey watched by 2 billion people worldwide. But today, in this quiet moment before the storm of royal preparation began, she was still just Kate from Berkshire, the girl who once worked as an accessories buyer, who lived in a London flat with friends, who could walk down the street unnoticed. This is the untold story of her final months as Miss Middleton, a time filled with private struggles, unexpected revelations, and the bittersweet process of saying goodbye to the life she had always known. What the world didn't see were the sleepless nights wondering if she was strong enough for what lay ahead, the secret training sessions preparing her for royal protocol, the heart-to-heart conversations with those who would soon become her subjects, and the profound realization that love sometimes requires the ultimate sacrifice, giving up who you are to become who you're meant to be. The notification chime from Kate's phone pierced the early morning silence of her Chelsea apartment. Still wrapped in her favorite worn cotton pajamas, she reached across the nightstand with reluctant fingers. The screen displayed dozens of missed calls and messages, but it was the text from Clarence's house that made her stomach flip. HRH would like to see you at your earliest convenience this morning. Car will collect you at 9 a.m. Catherine Elizabeth Middleton set the phone down with trembling hands. After nearly 9 years of dating Prince William, she had grown accustomed to the formal language that surrounded royal communications. But something about this particular message felt different, more urgent, more final. She glanced at her alarm clock, 6:47 a.m. In just over 2 hours, she would be sitting across from the future King of England. And somehow she knew that when she returned to this apartment, everything would have changed forever. The apartment itself seemed to sense the shift. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting familiar shadows across furniture that suddenly felt like props in a life she was about to leave behind. The mismatched throw pillows on her sofa, the stack of fashion magazines on the coffee table, the half-empty wine glasses from last night's dinner with her flatmate, all of it appeared frozen in time, waiting for her to return and resume the life of an ordinary 29-year-old woman. But Kate knew better. She had been preparing for this moment, consciously and unconsciously, ever since that fateful day at St. Andrews University when a gangly prince had paid £200 to sit in the front row of her charity fashion show. What started as university friendship had evolved into something that would reshape not just her life, but her very identity. She padded to the kitchen and mechanically went through the motions of making tea, her mind racing through possibilities. William had been different lately, more serious during their private moments, more protective when they were out together, more willing to discuss what their future might look like. His grandmother, the Queen, had begun including Kate in smaller family gatherings. His father, Prince Charles, had started asking her opinions on matters of public interest. The signs had been building for months, but Kate had almost been afraid to acknowledge them, terrified that giving voice to her hopes might somehow jinx them. The tea grew cold in her hands as she stared out the kitchen window at the London street below. Soon, very soon, she might never again experience the simple pleasure of watching morning commuters hurry past her window. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. How do you prepare to give up anonymity forever? How do you ready yourself to become a symbol rather than simply a person? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother, Carol Middleton, calling from the family home in Bucklebury. Kate hesitated before answering. Her parents had been incredibly supportive throughout her relationship with William, but she knew they were also acutely aware of what royal life might mean for their daughter. The privacy they had all treasured as a middle-class family would evaporate the moment any official announcement was made. "Darling, I just wanted to hear your voice this morning." Carol's familiar tone provided immediate comfort. "Your father and I were talking last night, and We both had the strangest feeling that today might be significant. Kate closed her eyes, grateful for her mother's intuition. I'm seeing William this morning. At Clarence House. It feels important, Mom. The pause on the other end of the line spoke volumes. Carol Middleton was a pragmatic woman who had built a successful party planning business from nothing. But she was also a mother who had watched her eldest daughter navigate the complexities of loving someone whose life belonged as much to the nation as it did to himself. Whatever happens today, whatever decisions need to be made, remember that you are strong enough for this, Carol said softly. You've always been strong enough. The question isn't whether you can handle what comes next, it's whether you want to. After ending the call, Kate found herself standing in front of her wardrobe, staring at clothes that might soon be analyzed and critiqued by fashion experts around the world. She selected a simple navy dress, conservative enough for a morning meeting with her boyfriend's family, elegant enough to show respect for the institution she might soon join. As she dressed, she caught glimpses of herself in the mirror and tried to imagine what she might look like in the formal portraits that would inevitably follow any engagement announcement. The drive to Clarence House passed in a blur of familiar London landmarks that somehow felt more significant today. Hyde Park Corner, where she had jogged countless times with William. The Wellington Arch, which she had photographed as a tourist long before she understood its proximity to the place where her future might be decided. Green Park, where she and William had walked hand in hand during the early days of their relationship, when the press attention was manageable and their future together still felt like a distant dream rather than an approaching reality. Prince William was waiting in the morning room when she arrived, and the expression on his face confirmed what she had already suspected. This was the conversation they had been building toward for months, perhaps years. He looked nervous in a way that reminded her of the shy young man she had first met at university, before the weight of his destiny had fully settled on his shoulders. Kate, I've been thinking about what we discussed last week. He began, his voice carrying the formal tone he used when discussing matters of state. But then his expression softened, and she saw the man she had fallen in love with. About our future, about what we both want from life. She nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. They had indeed been having more serious conversations lately about marriage, children, duty, and the sacrifices that would be required from both of them. William had been honest about the challenges she would face as his wife. The constant scrutiny, the loss of privacy, the need to subordinate her own ambitions to the requirements of royal duty. But he had also spoken about his deep love for her, his belief that she would excel in royal life, and his conviction that they could build something meaningful together. I spoke with my grandmother yesterday, William continued, and with my father. They both agree that if we're going to move forward together, it should be soon. The country is ready for good news, and, frankly, I'm ready to stop living in limbo. Kate's heart began to race. This was really happening. After years of speculation in the press, after countless articles questioning whether William would ever propose, after endless discussions about whether a commoner could successfully join the royal family, they were finally having the conversation that would determine the rest of their lives. There are things you need to know, William said, moving closer to where she sat on the edge of an antique chair, about what will happen the moment we announce our engagement, about how different everything will become, not just for you, but for your entire family. There's a security briefing scheduled for tomorrow morning, and constitutional discussions that will need to happen before any official announcement. The weight of his words settled around them like a heavy blanket. Kate had known intellectually that marrying William meant joining an institution with 1,000 years of history, but hearing about security briefings and constitutional discussions made the reality feel overwhelming. I need you to be absolutely certain, William continued, reaching for her hands. Because once we take this step, there's no going back to the life you've known. Your childhood home will need security modifications. Your parents will have protection officers. Every decision you make, from what you wear, where you shop, to how you spend your free time, will be scrutinized and analyzed. Kate looked into his eyes and saw not just love but worry. He was offering her a life of incredible privilege and purpose, but He was also asking her to sacrifice the fundamental freedom that most people took for granted. The freedom to be unremarkable when she chose to be. The freedom to make mistakes without national consequences. The freedom to change her mind about who she wanted to become. But she also saw in his expression the same certainty that had been growing in her own heart for months. Despite the challenges, despite the sacrifices, despite the fears that kept her awake at night, she loved him. More than that, she believed in what they could accomplish together. She had seen him with children during their charitable work together, had watched him navigate complex political situations with grace and intelligence, had witnessed his deep commitment to using his position to make a positive difference in the world. "I've been thinking about it too," she said quietly. "About what kind of life we could build together. About the work we could do. About the family we might have someday." William's face lit up with relief and joy. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Kate took a deep breath, aware that her next words would echo through history. "I'm saying that I love you enough to take this leap of faith. I'm saying that I want to spend my life with you, whatever that life looks like. I'm saying yes before you've even asked the question." The kiss that followed was both tender and urgent, a seal and a promise that would reshape both of their destinies. When they broke apart, William was smiling in a way Kate hadn't seen since their university days. "There's something I need to give you," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Something that belonged to my mother." Kate's breath caught as she recognized the unmistakable blue of Princess Diana's sapphire engagement ring. She had seen it in countless photographs, had read about its significance, but seeing it in person, knowing that William wanted her to wear it, made the magnitude of what was happening feel suddenly real. "She would have loved you," William said softly as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "She would have been so proud to see you wearing this." The ring fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. Kate stared at her hand, trying to process that she was now wearing one of the most famous pieces of jewelry in the world. More than that, she was wearing a symbol of love, loss, and hope that connected her not just to William, but to the tragic princess who had captured the world's heart. "What happens now?" she asked, still staring at the ring. "Now we plan a wedding," William said, grinning. "And in the meantime, we figure out how to tell the world that Kate Middleton is about to become Catherine, Princess of Wales." As they sat together in the morning room at Clarence's house, holding hands and making preliminary plans for their future, Kate felt as though she was standing at the edge of a vast ocean. Behind her lay the shore of her old life, familiar, safe, and increasingly distant. Ahead lay adventures and challenges she could barely imagine. The waves of change were already lapping at her feet, and soon they would carry her into waters where few had ever successfully navigated. But with William beside her and her new ring catching the morning sunlight, Kate Middleton was ready to dive in. Her farewell to ordinary life had officially begun. The black sedan pulled away from Clarence's house, with Kate still staring at the sapphire ring on her finger, the weight of it both foreign and somehow destined. William sat beside her, his hand covering hers, but she could feel the nervous energy radiating from him despite his calm exterior. They had agreed to wait 3 weeks before making any public announcement, time that would allow the palace to prepare the elaborate machinery required for a royal engagement announcement, while giving Kate a chance to slowly adjust to her new reality. "The Queen would like to see you this afternoon," William said quietly, his voice barely audible above the hum of the engine. "Privately. She wants to welcome you to the family properly, away from all the protocol and ceremony that will follow once this becomes public knowledge." Kate's stomach clenched. She had met Queen Elizabeth II several times over the years, but always in group settings surrounded by other family members. The prospect of a private audience with the most famous woman in the world felt both incredibly flattering and absolutely terrifying. What does one say to someone who has been a constant presence on the world stage for nearly 60 years? The car pulled up outside Kate's apartment building, and she suddenly realized that this might be one of the last times she would return here as simply herself. Tomorrow, security assessments would begin. Her neighbors would be questioned and cleared. Her daily routines would be analyzed for potential vulnerabilities. The life she had built in this small Chelsea flat, the life of a young professional woman navigating London independently, was about to become a carefully managed historical footnote. Her flatmate, Sophie, was waiting in the living room with barely contained curiosity. The two women had been friends since university, and Sophie had been Kate's confidant through all the ups and downs of her relationship with William. She took one look at Kate's face and immediately knew. "Oh my God," Sophie whispered, her eyes immediately darting to Kate's left hand. "He did it. He actually did it." Kate held up her hand, and the ring caught the afternoon light streaming through their small window. Sophie's sharp intake of breath confirmed what Kate already knew. There would be no hiding this development, no pretending that life could continue as normal even for another few days. "I can't believe you're going to be a princess," Sophie said, sinking onto their familiar sofa. "I mean, I always knew it was possible, but now that it's real." She trailed off, and Kate could see her friend processing the implications. Their casual dinners together, their spontaneous shopping trips, their late-night conversations about ordinary relationship problems, all of that was about to change dramatically. "I'm scared," Kate admitted, something she hadn't been able to say to William or her parents. "I'm terrified that I'll make a mistake, that I'll embarrass him or the family. What if I'm not smart enough, or graceful enough, or strong enough for this?" Sophie moved closer and took Kate's hands, careful not to disturb the ring. "Do you remember when we first met at St. Andrews? You were the girl who organized study groups for classmates who were struggling. You were the one who volunteered at the local charity shop, even when you barely had time for your own coursework. You were the person everyone turned to when they needed advice or support." Kate felt tears beginning to form. The ordinariness of her university memories felt precious now, like photographs from a childhood she was being forced to leave behind. "You've been preparing for this your whole life without realizing it," Sophie continued. "Your kindness, your work ethic, your ability to make people feel comfortable. Those aren't things you learn in princess lessons. Those are just who you are." The afternoon passed in a blur of phone calls and practical arrangements. Kate's parents drove down from Bucklebury, her mother's eyes immediately going to the ring before she pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. Her father, usually a man of few words, simply said, "We're proud of you, darling. Whatever comes next, we're proud." Her sister Pippa arrived shortly after, her excitement infectious despite the gravity of the situation. As the younger sister of someone about to join the royal family, Pippa would face her own challenges: constant media attention, scrutiny of her every relationship and career move, pressure to be a perfect supporting character in Kate's story. "You realize I'll never be able to have a normal relationship again," Pippa said with characteristic directness. "Every man I date will be analyzed for his suitability as a royal in-law." Kate felt a stab of guilt. She had been so focused on how the engagement would change her own life that she hadn't fully considered the ripple effects on everyone she loved. Her parents' party planning business would inevitably become more visible, potentially bringing unwanted attention to their clients. Her brother James's struggles with anxiety and depression might become tabloid fodder. Even Sophie would likely find herself mentioned in newspaper profiles about Kate's pre-royal life. As evening approached, it was time for Kate to meet with the Queen. The drive to Windsor Castle felt surreal, like something happening to someone else. The ancient walls and towers that had housed British monarchs for nearly 1,000 years loomed against the darkening sky, and Kate tried to imagine herself as someone who belonged in such a place. Queen Elizabeth II received her in a private sitting room filled with personal photographs and comfortable furniture that made the space feel more like a grandmother's parlor than a royal reception room. The Queen, dressed in a simple wool dress and pearls, gestured for Kate to sit across from her in a wing-back chair. "My dear," the Queen began, her voice warm but carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed, "I wanted to speak with you alone before the official machinery begins to turn. Once we announce your engagement, you'll be surrounded by advisors and protocol officers and people telling you how to behave. Tonight, I simply want to welcome you to our family." Kate felt some of her nervousness ease. This was not the formal monarch she had expected, but a woman who understood better than anyone else the challenges Kate was about to face. "I know this is overwhelming," the queen continued. "When I was your age, I never expected to become queen. I was the spare, not the heir. But circumstances changed, and I had to learn how to balance personal happiness with duty to the crown. You'll face different challenges, but the fundamental question remains the same. How do you remain true to yourself while serving something larger than yourself?" The question hung in the air between them, and Kate realized that this was not rhetorical. The queen genuinely wanted her thoughts. "I think about Princess Diana sometimes," Kate said carefully, "about how difficult it must have been for her to adapt to this life. I wonder if I'm strong enough to handle what she couldn't." The queen's expression grew thoughtful. Diana was a remarkable young woman who brought tremendous gifts to this family. She also faced pressures and scrutiny that were better equipped to manage now. The media landscape has changed, public expectations are different, and we've learned from past mistakes. She leaned forward slightly. "But I want you to understand something important. Your value to this family isn't measured by how well you can replicate what others have done before you. William chose you because of who you are, not because of who you might become. The key to surviving in this role is to never lose sight of that authentic self." They talked for nearly 2 hours, covering everything from the practical aspects of royal life to the emotional challenges of constant public attention. The queen shared stories about her own early years as a royal wife, the mistakes she had made, the lessons she had learned. She spoke candidly about the isolation that sometimes came with the role, but also about the incredible privilege of being able to make a meaningful difference in people's lives. "There will be days when you question whether this was the right choice," the queen warned. "Days when the criticism feels unfair, when the demands seem impossible, when you long for the privacy you've given up. On those days, remember why you said yes. Remember what you and William can accomplish together." As Kate prepared to leave, the queen walked with her to the door of the sitting room. "I have one piece of practical advice," she said with a slight smile. "Learn to sleep in cars. You'll be doing a tremendous amount of traveling, and the ability to rest during transport will serve you well." The drive back to London felt different. Kate was no longer simply William's girlfriend riding in a royal car. She was a future member of the family, someone the queen had personally welcomed and advised. The weight of that acceptance was both comforting and daunting. Back in her apartment, Kate found Sophie waiting with Chinese takeout and a bottle of champagne. They sat on the floor of their small living room, eating directly from the containers like they had done countless times before. "I keep thinking this might be our last normal night together," Kate said, picking at her sweet and sour chicken. "Once the announcement happens, everything changes. I'll have protection officers, media following me everywhere, official duties to fulfill." "You're still going to be you," Sophie insisted. "Engaged to a prince, maybe, but still the person who puts ketchup on expensive restaurant meals and watches terrible reality television when she's stressed." They spent the evening looking through photo albums from their years of friendship, pictures from university, holidays together, quiet dinners, and celebration parties. Each photograph felt like evidence of a life Kate was preparing to leave behind, memories she would treasure, but might never be able to replicate. As she prepared for bed that night, Kate stood again in front of her bedroom mirror. The reflection looked the same as it had that morning, but everything else had fundamentally changed. Tomorrow, the palace would begin briefing senior staff about the engagement. Security assessments would commence. Protocol lessons would be scheduled. The elaborate choreography of royal life would begin to unfold around her. She twisted the sapphire ring on her finger, still amazed by its weight and significance. Princess Diana had worn this ring through her own engagement, her wedding day, the birth of her children, and the collapse of her marriage. Now it was Kate's responsibility to create new memories with this piece of history, to honor the past while building something different and hopefully more sustainable. Her phone buzzed with a text from William. "Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for being brave enough for this adventure. I love you. Kate smiled as she typed back. Thank you for asking. Thank you for believing I can do this. Tomorrow the real work begins. But as she turned off the light and settled into her familiar bed for what might be the last time as simply Kate Middleton, she felt a sense of peace settling over her uncertainty. The Queen had welcomed her. Her family supported her. William loved her. And somewhere deep inside, beneath all the fear and excitement and anticipation, she was beginning to believe that she really might be strong enough for the extraordinary life that awaited her. The girl from Berkshire was ready to become a princess. The transformation began at dawn on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after William's proposal. Kate stood in what had been her favorite coffee shop in Chelsea, but now 2 men in dark suits stood discreetly near the entrance while another positioned himself by the back exit. Her new reality had arrived in the form of personal protection officers who would become permanent fixtures in her life. Miss Middleton, the lead officer, Inspector Davis, approached her table with professional courtesy. We'll need to discuss your daily routines so we can ensure your safety while maintaining as much normalcy as possible. Kate looked around the familiar cafe where she had spent countless mornings reading newspapers and planning her day. Other customers were beginning to notice the unusual presence of security personnel, their curious glances confirming what she already knew. Her anonymous life was officially over, even before any public announcement had been made. The next several hours were spent in detailed discussions about everything from her preferred grocery stores to her jogging routes in Hyde Park. Every location she frequented would need to be assessed for security risks. Every person she regularly interacted with would need to be vetted. The spontaneity she had always treasured was being systematically eliminated in favor of carefully planned and protected activities. Your flat will need significant modifications, Inspector Davis explained as they walked through her apartment. Reinforced windows, upgraded locks, communication systems that connect directly to Scotland Yard. We'll also need to install security cameras in the building's common areas. Kate watched as her private sanctuary was analyzed and critiqued from a security perspective. The large windows she loved for their morning light were identified as vulnerabilities. The fire escape she had never thought about became a potential access point for unwanted intruders. Even her beloved small balcony, with its collection of potted herbs, was deemed a security concern. "How long do I have?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer would be insufficient. "The modifications will begin tomorrow," Inspector Davis replied. "You'll need to relocate temporarily while the work is completed. The palace has arranged alternative accommodation." The alternative accommodation turned out to be a suite at Clarence House, effectively meaning Kate would be living under the same roof as Prince Charles and Camilla during the most intense period of preparation for her new role. The irony wasn't lost on her. In order to prepare for marriage to William, she was moving into his father's house like a character from a Jane Austen novel. Her first evening at Clarence House, Kate found herself dining with Charles and Camilla in an elegant private dining room that could have accommodated 20 people, but felt intimate with just the 3 of them present. Prince Charles, whom she had known for years but never lived with, proved to be a thoughtful host genuinely interested in her adjustment process. "The most difficult part isn't learning the protocol," Charles said over dessert, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who had spent his entire life in royal service. "The protocol can be taught, memorized, practiced until it becomes second nature. The real challenge is learning to maintain your authentic self while fulfilling the role the public expects you to play." Camilla, who had navigated her own complex journey into royal life, nodded in agreement. "The press will want to create a narrative about who you are, what you represent, how you will change the monarchy. Your job is to stay grounded in your own truth while being flexible enough to grow into the role." Over the following days, Kate's education in royal life began in earnest. Morning sessions focused on constitutional history and the contemporary role of the monarchy. She learned about the Commonwealth nations, the delicate balance between political neutrality and social influence, the careful choreography of royal appearances designed to maximize positive impact while avoiding controversy. Afternoon lessons covered practical skills that seemed almost comical until she realized their genuine importance. How to get out of a car gracefully while wearing a formal dress and holding a bouquet. How to walk down receiving lines efficiently while making each person feel individually acknowledged. How to eat a five-course dinner while maintaining conversation with table partners on both sides. How to deliver brief speeches that sounded personal and heartfelt despite being carefully scripted. Your wedding will be watched by an estimated 2 billion people worldwide, explained Lady Margaret Thornfield, Kate's primary etiquette instructor and a woman who had served the royal family for 30 years. Every gesture, every expression, every moment will be analyzed and remembered. We need to prepare you not just for the ceremony, but for the lifetime of public appearances that will follow. The weight of those numbers, 2 billion people, was almost incomprehensible. Kate had grown up in a small town where everyone knew each other. Even her years in London had been relatively private. The idea that her wedding day would be a global event watched by nearly 1/3 of the world population made her feel dizzy. Evenings were spent in conversation with William, who would arrive at Clarence's house after completing his own royal duties and find Kate surrounded by briefing papers, protocol manuals, and etiquette guides. He was patient with her questions, supportive during her moments of doubt, but she could see the strain in his eyes as well. The man who had fallen in love with her natural, unguarded personality was watching her undergo intensive training to become someone more polished, more careful, more conscious of how her every action would be perceived. "I worry that I'm losing myself," Kate confessed one evening as they walked through the private gardens behind Clarence's house. "Every day, I learn about new ways I need to modify my behavior, new expectations I need to meet. What if you wake up after our wedding and realize you've married a carefully constructed royal persona instead of the person you actually fell in love with?" William stopped walking and turned to face her. "Do you remember our third date? When we went to that tiny restaurant in Edinburgh, and the waiter spilled red wine all over your white shirt?" Kate smiled despite her anxiety. She remembered the evening vividly. The embarrassment, the way the entire restaurant had turned to stare, her instinct to laugh rather than cry about the ruined clothing. "You could have been mortified," William continued. "You could have made a scene, or left, or acted like the spoiled rich girl some people assumed you were. Instead, you helped the waiter clean up the mess, made jokes to put him at ease, and insisted on finishing dinner in your wine-stained shirt because you didn't want him to feel bad about the accident." He took her hands, careful as always with the sapphire ring that was slowly becoming familiar. That moment, that kindness, that grace under pressure, that ability to put someone else's comfort before your own embarrassment. That's who you are at your core. All this training, all these lessons, they're just tools to help you express that authentic self in a royal context. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Prince Harry, who bounded into the garden with his characteristic energy and immediately began teasing Kate about her princess lessons. "I heard you spent 2 hours today learning how to wave properly," Harry said with a grin. "Please tell me they didn't make you practice the royal wave. That thing is ridiculous." Despite the stress of her intensive training, Kate found herself laughing. Harry's irreverent humor was exactly what she needed, a reminder that the royal family, despite all the protocol and formality, was also just a family dealing with ordinary human emotions and relationships. "Actually, there are 7 different types of royal waves," Kate replied with mock seriousness. "The balcony wave, the walkabout wave, the car window wave, the garden party wave." "Stop," Harry interrupted, holding up his hands in surrender. "I can't handle knowing there are actually 7 different waves. That's more terrifying than anything they taught us in the army." The 3 of them spent the evening talking about everything except royal duties: Harry's military service, William's pilot training, Kate's memories of university life. For a few hours, Kate felt like herself again, just a young woman spending time with her boyfriend and his brother, laughing about ordinary things. But the next morning brought new challenges. Kate's first official lesson in working with the media took place in a conference room at Buckingham Palace, where she was introduced to the palace press secretary and taught how to navigate the complex relationship between the royal family and the journalists who covered them. The British press can be your greatest asset or your most dangerous adversary, explained Jonathan Mitchell, a veteran royal correspondent who had covered the family for 20 years. They have the power to shape public opinion about you, to support your charitable work, to help you connect with people you'll never meet personally. But they also have the power to invade your privacy, to misrepresent your actions, to create controversies where none exist. Kate learned about the delicate balance of providing enough access to maintain positive relationships with key journalists while protecting her privacy and that of her family. She practiced giving brief statements to cameras, learned how to deflect inappropriate questions politely but firmly, and studied examples of how other royal family members had handled both positive and negative media attention. The most important thing to remember, Jonathan continued, is that you can never completely control how you're portrayed. Your job is to be consistently authentic, consistently gracious, and consistently focused on your work rather than your image. The public has an excellent instinct for authenticity. They can tell the difference between someone who's genuinely committed to their role and someone who's just playing a part. As the days passed, Kate began to develop a deeper appreciation for the complexity of modern royal life. It wasn't simply a matter of wearing beautiful clothes and attending glamorous events. Every public appearance was carefully orchestrated to support specific charitable causes, to strengthen relationships between Britain and other nations, or to highlight important social issues. The royal family functioned as a form of soft diplomacy, using their visibility and influence to advance British interests and values around the world. Her education expanded beyond protocol and media training to include substantive briefings on the issues she would be expected to champion as a working royal. Children's welfare, mental health awareness, arts education, environmental conservation. Kate was encouraged to develop genuine expertise in areas that aligned with her personal interests and could benefit from royal attention. Your patronages will define your royal identity, explained Dame Patricia Williams, who had advised multiple generations of royal women. Choose causes you genuinely care about, because you'll be working with them for decades. The public can sense when support is authentic versus when it's merely obligatory. Kate found herself drawn to organizations focused on early childhood development and family support systems. Her own stable, loving family background had given her tremendous advantages, and she was increasingly passionate about ensuring other children had access to similar support and opportunities. But even as she threw herself into learning about her future role, Kate couldn't shake the melancholy that accompanied each step away from her former life. Phone calls with university friends became more infrequent as her schedule filled with royal obligations. Simple pleasures like grocery shopping or spontaneous coffee dates became logistical challenges requiring advanced planning and security clearances. One evening, while reviewing briefing materials about the Commonwealth nations, Kate discovered a handwritten note tucked between the pages. The elegant script belonged to Princess Diana. Remember that this role is a privilege that comes with tremendous responsibility, but it's also an opportunity to make a real difference in people's lives. Never lose sight of why you said yes. Kate stared at the note for a long time, wondering when it had been written and how it had ended up in her materials. Had Diana intended for her future daughter-in-law to find it? Was it simply a coincidence that it appeared exactly when Kate needed encouragement? Regardless of how it had reached her, the message felt like a blessing from the woman whose memory would always be part of Kate's story. She carefully placed the note in her personal journal, a reminder that she was not the first woman to struggle with this transition and hopefully not the last to find the strength to succeed in it. As her third week of intensive training drew to a close, Kate realized she was becoming someone new, not losing herself, as she had feared, but expanding into a larger version of who she had always been. The girl from Berkshire was still there, but she was developing the skills and knowledge needed to serve as a modern princess in an increasingly complex world. The announcement was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in November, exactly 3 weeks after William's proposal. Kate woke before dawn in her temporary suite at Clarence House, her stomach churning with anticipation and anxiety. In just a few hours, the private engagement that only their families and closest friends knew about would become global news, transforming her from an anonymous young woman into one of the most photographed people on Earth. She stood at the window watching the early morning activity in the courtyard below, already noting the increased security presence and the subtle preparations being made for what palace staff euphemistically called Announcement Day. Television trucks would soon arrive outside Buckingham Palace. Journalists from around the world have been alerted to expect significant royal news. The machinery of modern royal communications was preparing to launch into action. William arrived at her door, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the same nervous expression she remembered from their university exams. Despite all his royal training, despite growing up in the spotlight, he was clearly feeling the weight of this moment as much as she was. "Ready to change our lives forever?" he asked, attempting lightness, but not quite managing to hide his own anxiety. "I don't think anyone can ever be truly ready for this," Kate replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "But yes, I'm ready to try." They had breakfast together in comfortable silence, both aware that this would be their last private meal before becoming public property. The engagement ring felt heavier than usual on Kate's finger, as if it too understood the significance of the approaching announcement. At 9 o'clock sharp, they were summoned to Clarence House's morning room, where palace communications staff had assembled to walk them through the day's carefully choreographed events. Press releases had been prepared in multiple languages. Official photographs would be taken in the state apartments at St. James's Palace. A brief television interview would be recorded for broadcast that evening. Every detail had been planned to ensure the announcement generated maximum positive coverage while protecting Kate from the inevitable media frenzy that would follow. "The Prime Minister will be informed 30 minutes before the public announcement," explained Simon Morrison, the palace's senior communications director. "The Archbishop of Canterbury has already been briefed. Representatives from the Commonwealth nations received preliminary notice yesterday." Kate marveled at the complexity of announcing their personal decision. What had been an intimate moment between 2 people in love required consultation with government officials, religious leaders, and diplomatic representatives from 54 countries. The private had become irrevocably political. The official photo shoot took place in the lavishly decorated state apartments, with Kate wearing a navy wrap dress that had been carefully selected to photograph well under television lights, while appearing appropriately conservative for such a momentous announcement. The sapphire engagement ring was positioned to catch the light perfectly, ensuring clear images for newspapers around the world. As the photographer arranged them in various poses, standing together by tall windows, sitting on an ornate sofa, walking through the elegant rooms, Kate tried to imagine these images reproduced in newspapers and magazines in dozens of countries, becoming permanent visual records of this turning point in their lives. "Think about something that makes you happy," the photographer instructed. "This announcement should feel joyful, celebratory." Kate looked at William and thought about their quiet moments together, walking hand in hand through Hyde Park, cooking simple dinners in her apartment, laughing together at ridiculous movies. The happiness was genuine, but it felt strange to perform it for cameras that would broadcast their emotions to billions of strangers. The television interview proved even more challenging. Sitting beside William in matching chairs, facing an experienced royal correspondent who had covered the family for decades, Kate tried to appear relaxed and confident while discussing the most personal aspects of her relationship. "Miss Middleton, how does it feel to know you'll one day be queen?" the journalist asked, his tone friendly but professional. The question hit Kate like a physical blow. Throughout all her preparation, all her protocol lessons, and constitutional briefings, she had somehow managed to avoid fully confronting this ultimate reality. Not just princess, not just duchess, but eventually Queen of the United Kingdom and 15 other Commonwealth realms, head of the Commonwealth, Supreme Governor of the Church of England. "It's a huge responsibility," she replied carefully, drawing on weeks of media training. I'm honored by Prince William's proposal and by the welcome I've received from his family. I look forward to taking on the duties and privileges that come with this role. The words sounded formal and rehearsed, even to her own ears, but they were safe. Later, when she had more experience with public speaking, she might be able to express her genuine emotions more naturally. For now, getting through the interview without making any major mistakes felt like victory enough. William reached over and took her hand during a particularly probing question about their long courtship and the years of speculation about their future together. His touch reminded her that beneath all the ceremony and protocol, this was still fundamentally about their love for each other and their shared commitment to building a life together. We've taken our time to get to know each other and to be sure about our feelings, Williams said, addressing the indirect criticism of their extended courtship. We wanted to be certain we could handle the challenges that come with royal marriage. Kate has proven herself to be remarkably strong and adaptable. After the interview, they returned to Clarence House to wait for the announcement to be released. At exactly 11 o'clock GMT, the official statement appeared simultaneously on royal websites, social media platforms, and news agency feeds around the world. His Royal Highness Prince William of Wales and Miss Catherine Middleton are engaged to be married. The wedding will take place in the spring or summer of 2011 in London. Further details about the wedding day will be announced in due course. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, Kate's photograph was appearing on news websites from New York to Tokyo. Television programs interrupted regular broadcasting to announce the engagement. Social media platforms crashed under the volume of posts and shares related to the news. The girl from Berkshire had become an instant global celebrity. Kate watched the coverage from the safety of Clarence House, mesmerized by the speed with which her private life had become public property. News anchors were already speculating about wedding details that hadn't even been discussed yet. Fashion experts were analyzing her engagement outfit and predicting trends based on her style choices. Royal historians were placing the engagement in the context of centuries of royal marriages. "It's surreal," she said to William as they watched BBC correspondents broadcasting live from outside Buckingham Palace, where crowds were already gathering despite the cold November weather. "It gets easier," he assured her. "The initial intensity will calm down once the novelty wears off. But, yes, it's always a bit strange watching other people discuss your life as if it's public property." That evening, they joined Prince Charles and Camilla for dinner, their first meal together as an officially engaged couple. The atmosphere was celebratory, but also tinged with awareness that everything had fundamentally changed. Kate was no longer William's girlfriend who might someday join the family. She was officially the future Princess of Wales, with all the expectations and responsibilities that title carried. "The phone hasn't stopped ringing," Prince Charles reported with amusement. Congratulations from heads of state, interview requests from international media, invitations to events around the world. "You've certainly captured global attention." After dinner, Kate excused herself to call her parents from the privacy of her temporary room. The conversation was emotional, pride, excitement, and underlying worry mixing in her mother's voice as they discussed the day's events and what would come next. "Your father and I are so proud of you," Carol said, her voice thick with tears. "Watching you handle those interviews today, seeing how composed and gracious you were, we could hardly believe our little girl was speaking to the entire world." "I'm scared, Mom," Kate admitted, allowing herself vulnerability now that the public performances of the day were complete. "What if I'm not good enough for this? What if I let everyone down?" "You listen to me," Catherine Elizabeth Middleton, her mother said with fierce certainty. "You are exactly good enough for this. You are kind, intelligent, hardworking, and deeply principled. Those are the qualities that matter, not whether you were born into nobility. You'll learn the rest." As Kate prepared for bed that night, she realized that November 16th, 2010 would forever mark the end of her anonymous life. Tomorrow, photographers would be stationed outside every location she might visit. Her shopping habits, exercise routines, and social activities would become subjects of public interest and tabloid speculation. The freedom she had taken for granted, the freedom to be unremarkable when she chose to be, was permanently gone. But looking at her engagement ring in the lamplight, she also felt a sense of purpose crystallizing. The global reaction to their announcement had reinforced how much influence she would have as William's wife. The platform that came with royal status could be used to highlight causes she cared about, to support charitable organizations making real differences in people's lives, to represent British values and interests around the world. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Sophie, her university flatmate. "Just saw you on the evening news in Japan. My flatmate is literally famous. So proud of you. Call me when you can. We have so much to celebrate." The message made Kate smile through her exhaustion. Despite all the changes, despite the security protocols and media attention and constitutional significance of her engagement, she was still the same person who valued friendship, who appreciated loyalty, who wanted to stay connected to the people who had known her before she became a global figure. Over the following days, the engagement dominated international news coverage in a way that surprised even seasoned royal watchers. The combination of economic uncertainty around the world and Kate's relatable background seemed to have created unusual public enthusiasm for what many were already calling a fairy tale romance. Fashion websites analyzed every aspect of her engagement outfit and predicted that her style choices would influence trends for years to come. The blue wrap dress she had worn for the announcement sold out within hours of the news breaking. Jewelry stores reported increased interest in sapphire engagement rings. Even her hairstyle, long, natural-looking waves, was being copied by women around the world. "You've become a global brand," observed Dame Patricia Williams during one of Kate's continued protocol sessions. "Everything you wear, every cause you support, every appearance you make will have economic and social impact far beyond what you might expect. It's both an incredible privilege and a serious responsibility." Kate was beginning to understand the complex ecosystem that surrounded royal activity. Her wedding would boost tourism to London and generate revenue for British businesses. Her fashion choices would influence international perceptions of British style and potentially support domestic designers. Her charitable patronages would bring global attention and funding to important causes. The personal had become political in ways she was still learning to comprehend. As the initial media frenzy began to settle into a more sustainable level of coverage, Kate started to glimpse what her new normal might look like. Constant low-level attention punctuated by moments of intense scrutiny. Every public appearance carefully planned and analyzed. Privacy that existed only behind palace walls and in the company of family and carefully vetted friends. But she was also beginning to see the extraordinary opportunities that came with such visibility. Letters were arriving from around the world, congratulations from children, invitations to visit schools, and charities, requests for royal patronage from organizations doing incredible work. The engagement had made her a symbol of hope and possibility for people facing their own challenges. Standing at the window of her Clarence house suite 2 weeks after the announcement, watching photographers with telephoto lenses stationed across the street, Kate felt a complex mixture of loss and anticipation. The girl from Berkshire was officially gone, replaced by a woman whose every move would be documented and discussed. But that woman would have opportunities to make a difference that the girl from Berkshire could never have imagined. The final phase of her transformation was about to begin. The final months passed in a whirlwind of wedding preparations that seemed to involve every detail from the flowers in Westminster Abbey to the economic impact of the anticipated global television audience. Kate found herself at the center of planning discussions that balanced personal preferences with constitutional requirements, romantic dreams with diplomatic necessities, intimate family wishes with the needs of a nation celebrating its future queen. She stood in the fitting room at the Royal School of Needlework, where her wedding dress was taking shape under conditions of absolute secrecy that would have impressed intelligence agencies. Only a handful of people knew the design details that would be revealed to the world on April 29th, 2011, and each fitting felt like participating in the creation of history rather than simply choosing a beautiful gown. The dress will be photographed from every conceivable angle, explained Sarah Burton, the designer who had taken over Alexander McQueen's fashion house and was creating what would undoubtedly become one of the most analyzed garments in history. Every seam, every detail, every choice we make will be scrutinized and remembered for decades. Kate stood motionless as seamstresses made minute adjustments to the intricate lacework that would cover the bodice. The dress was being constructed using techniques that combined centuries-old craftsmanship with contemporary design, creating something that honored royal wedding traditions while reflecting Kate's personal style. Even this private moment felt weighted with significance. She was not simply choosing a dress, but creating a visual symbol that would represent her transition into royal life. The months of preparation had been a masterclass in the complexity of modern royal events. Westminster Abbey could accommodate 1,900 guests, but the invitation list required delicate diplomatic consideration. Heads of state, Commonwealth representatives, royal families from around the world, personal friends, and family members all needed to be balanced in a seating arrangement that reflected both personal relationships and international protocol. Your wedding is simultaneously a religious ceremony, a state occasion, a family celebration, and a global media event, explained Lieutenant Colonel Dan Hughes, who was coordinating the military aspects of the ceremony. Each element requires careful planning to ensure everything proceeds smoothly while maintaining the dignity appropriate to such a significant occasion. Kate had been fascinated to learn about the military precision required to coordinate the procession from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace. Horse guards would line the route, military bands would provide music, and thousands of police officers would ensure security while allowing maximum public access to the celebration. The logistics rivaled those of major international summits, but the goal was to create a joyful public celebration rather than a security-focused political gathering. Her final weeks as Miss Middleton were spent in intensive rehearsals that covered everything from the exact timing of her walk down the Abbey aisle to the choreography of appearing on the Buckingham Palace balcony after the ceremony. Every moment of the wedding day had been planned and practiced to ensure smooth execution under the pressure of global attention. Remember that 2 billion people will be watching. Her protocol instructor reminded her during a particularly challenging practice session, focusing on the precise movements required during the religious ceremony. But also remember that at its heart, this is your wedding day. The joy and love you feel should be genuine and visible, even within all the formality. Kate was learning to balance authenticity with performance in ways she had never imagined necessary. The wedding needed to feel both majestic and personal, both historically significant and emotionally genuine. She and William were expected to appear simultaneously as fairy tale figures stepping from the pages of a storybook, and as real young people genuinely in love and committed to their future together. During rare, quiet moments, Kate would slip away to visit her old apartment in Chelsea, now completely renovated with security modifications, but feeling like a museum exhibit of her former life. She would sit in what had been her living room, surrounded by furniture that now seemed to belong to someone else, and try to remember what it felt like to wake up without knowing that millions of people were interested in her daily activities. I keep thinking I should feel sadder about leaving all this behind, she confessed to Sophie during one such visit. But honestly, I'm mostly excited about what comes next. Is that terrible? Should I be mourning my normal life more? Sophie, who had watched Kate's transformation over the past months with a mixture of pride and amazement, shook her head firmly. You're excited because you're ready. You've done the work to prepare yourself, and you can see the possibilities ahead. That's not terrible. That's exactly how someone should feel when they're about to start an extraordinary adventure. The final week before the wedding brought a series of farewell events that marked Kate's official transition from private citizen to public figure. A private dinner at Buckingham Palace introduced her to extended members of European royal families who would attend the ceremony. A reception at Clarence House celebrated her engagement with friends and family who had supported her throughout the long courtship. Each event felt like a step further from her old life and closer to her new role. Her parents hosted a small gathering at their Bucklebury home, inviting neighbors and family friends who had known Kate since childhood. Walking through the village where she had grown up, surrounded by people who remembered her as a schoolgirl rather than a future princess, Kate felt the poignant contrast between who she had been and who she was becoming. "You'll always be our Kate," said Mrs. Patterson, who had taught her in primary school and now watched with tears in her eyes as photographers documented even this intimate community celebration. "Royal or not, you're still the little girl who helped clean up the classroom without being asked and made sure new students felt welcome." The comments stayed with Kate as the final preparations intensified. Beneath all the protocol training and constitutional briefings, beneath the designer gowns and state jewelry she was learning to wear, she was still the person who instinctively reached out to help others, who valued kindness over status, who believed in using whatever advantages she possessed to make positive differences in the world. Her final night as Miss Middleton was spent at the Goring Hotel just around the corner from Buckingham Palace with her family and closest friends. The evening felt both celebratory and melancholy, a farewell party for the life she was leaving behind, and a welcome celebration for the future she was embracing. "I want you to promise me something," her mother said as they sat together in Kate's hotel room after the other guests had departed. "Promise me that no matter how grand your life becomes, no matter how many titles you acquire or how many people want your attention, you'll remember that your worth isn't measured by your royal status. You are valuable because of who you are, not because of who you married." Kate hugged her mother tightly, understanding that this advice would become crucial in the years ahead when public criticism inevitably came, when she made mistakes that would be magnified by media attention, when the pressure of constant scrutiny threatened to undermine her confidence. "I promise," she said, "and I promise to stay connected to the people who knew me before all this, who can remind me of who I really am when I forget." That night, Kate lay awake in her hotel bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about the transformation she had undergone since William's proposal 5 months earlier. She had learned to navigate diplomatic receptions and state dinners. She had studied the constitutional role of the monarchy and the delicate balance between political neutrality and social influence. She had practiced walking in formal gowns, curtsying to the Queen, and delivering brief speeches that would be analyzed by commentators around the world. But more importantly, she had discovered reserves of strength and confidence she hadn't known she possessed. The scared young woman who had worried about embarrassing herself or letting others down had been replaced by someone who understood her capabilities and was ready to use them in service of something larger than herself. As dawn broke on April 29, 2011, Kate Middleton prepared for the last day she would bear that name. Her wedding day would be a global celebration watched by more people than any event in television history. It would mark the beginning of her life as a working royal, with duties and obligations that would continue for decades. It would transform her from a private individual into a permanent public figure whose every action would be scrutinized and debated. But as she stood before the mirror in her hotel room, putting on the simple robe that would soon be replaced by the most famous wedding dress of the 21st century, Kate felt a profound sense of peace. The journey from ordinary young woman to future princess had been challenging, sometimes overwhelming, occasionally frightening. But it had also been a journey of growth, discovery, and preparation for a role she now believed she could fulfill with grace and purpose. The girl from Berkshire who had once worried about being smart enough or strong enough for royal life had proven herself to be exactly what the monarchy needed, someone who could bridge the gap between tradition and modernity, between privilege and accessibility, between duty and authenticity. She had learned to balance respect for centuries of royal protocol with her own genuine desire to use her position to help others. As her hairdresser arrived to begin the elaborate process of preparing her for the ceremony, Kate took one last look at her reflection as Miss Middleton. Tomorrow she would wake up as the Duchess of Cambridge, with a lifetime of royal duties stretching ahead of her. But she would also wake up as William's wife, ready to build a family and a life together based on the love that had sustained them through years of uncertainty and months of intense preparation. The transformation was complete. Kate Middleton had successfully navigated the complex journey from private citizen to public figure, from girlfriend to fiancée to future queen. She had proven herself capable of handling intense scrutiny while maintaining her essential kindness and authenticity. She had learned to balance personal desires with public duty, individual expression with institutional requirements. Most importantly, she had demonstrated that ordinary people could rise to extraordinary circumstances when supported by love, guided by strong values, and committed to using their opportunities in service of others. The fairy tale was real, but it was also the result of hard work, genuine character, and the courage to embrace a destiny that was both thrilling and daunting. As the final preparations began for her wedding day, Catherine Elizabeth Middleton was ready to step into her new role with confidence, grace, and determination to honor both the tradition she was joining and the authentic self she had worked so hard to preserve throughout the transformation. The farewell chapter was ending. The royal story was about to begin.